Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about Mattel's American Girl line going all girl power, gamer girl power, with a new doll called Courtney Moore, and she's a gamer girl from the 1980s.
Right. No, I was actually excited about Courtney.
Yeah.
Because the doll is probably the same age as me.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about, some of the things they got right with it, some of the things they got wrong with it, and some of the, I think, the low-key messaging with the marketing around this doll that there were no women gamers back in the day.
Yeah.
And this seems to be a narrative that's being pushed by, I think, younger marketing people right now. Because it's patently untrue. Given that we are the same age as this doll.
Right.
Okay, not actually the doll, but the character she's supposed to be. I literally grew up with gaming.
Right. As did I, and I'm a girl.
Yeah, so we saw a lot of things that I think that the 25-year-old that's writing the social media and writing the blurbs in the catalog probably did not see.
Well, even with the doll design, there are some things that they picked with the color schemes or some of the acid washed. They were actually a little bit later than 86, and there were things that they're talking about being popular that were popular before 1986. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, so before we get into it, please give us a sub if you haven't done so already. We do talk about pop culture, we talk about gaming, we talk about animation, we talk about movies, comic books, whatever interests us that day. We do have a heavier focus on the 1980s and 90s, given that's when we grew up.
Yep.
Because we're old.
Yeah.
So we do talk a lot about retro stuff, and this was definitely right up Geeky's alley. Now, I think we're going to cut away to the catalog first.
Yes, because there's a different write-up there.
There is. The website, everything's like, okay, this is all cool, whatever. They have some really hokey, what we'll show you here after the cutaway, their little movie music video thing that they did. It's really cheesy. But first, we're going to show you the catalog, and then we're going to talk about it. Okay, guys. Hey, you can see we've actually got the Pac-Man machine.
Yep.
We actually have it. It's Numbskull makes these. They're actually really cool.
You asked them, it's the same machine.
It is the same machine. Apparently they repackaged it for American Girl. But now this is a little bit different than what they have on the website. This is the new catalog that came out.
Yeah, here, the brand new one. Our daughter just got it yesterday.
Yeah, so we're like, okay, this is cool. Because you've actually been looking forward to this doll, right?
Oh yeah, because she's the same age as me.
Yeah, so everything's cool until we get over here.
Yeah, and then it says, Courtney Moore is the highest scoring player in the arcade, but she can't understand why there aren't more female characters in the game she plays. When a school project gives Courtney a chance to create her own game, she draws from real-life experiences to invent a female superhero who fights for a better future for everyone in the galaxy.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about this more in depth and how they're actually getting a lot of things wrong. A lot of things wrong.
Yeah.
All right, so that was the catalog. And that jumped out at me, I'm thumbing through it. I saw the Pinky Boo got the other day. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is that doll you were looking at, the Geeky was looking at.
It was me actually, not Pinky. Here's the thing though, okay, American Girl dolls, I'm familiar with them very much so because Pinky Boo loves them. They actually came onto the scene like around the time I was kind of getting out of toys, around this time for 86. And I think it was the first year they had the American Girl doll stuff. And, they do have a focus on girl power, which I have no problem with. I have absolutely no problem with girl power. I think it's important. I have a problem with when they start this narrative that girls have to beat boys to be the best.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, I guess I have a different experience growing up than the other people do. And I remember this where clearly the people that are behind it necessarily do not. So let's talk about this first, and then we'll talk about me growing up, and we'll talk about the stuff around this doll and stuff. Okay, so we had to go back and pull up the actual write-up. And here's the write-up on the website. Courtney Moore is growing up in California's San Fernando Valley. She's like totally 80s girl who loves watching music videos after school, renting movies on the weekends, and going to the mall every chance she gets. Yeah, that all sounds pretty accurate, actually. Courtney's favorite place is Smiley's Arcade because she loves playing video games. Arcades were big back then. Makes sense. Courtney likes being in control of what happens, which isn't always the case in real life. True. She and her stepsister Tina don't always get along, and now that Courtney's mom is running for mayor, things are changing at home. It's a whole new game for Courtney, and she's figuring out the rules as she goes. I like this write-up much better because I think it addresses actual issues that a girl would face. It makes more sense than like, oh my God, she has to be the number one at the arcade.
Yeah, so that's what jumped, because this is what we read originally when the doll came out. We're like,
Right.
oh, this is pretty cool. And then you get the book and you're like, oh my God, there are no female characters in gaming. There's just no, there are no women in games.
So it's like, wait, okay. And now they have a lot of cool 80s stuff that goes with it. You've got Care Bears, lots of Care Bears and Pac-Man and stuff. Notice how what's funny to me is Mattel owns the rights to She-Ra, and what was big in 1986?
Yeah, that's
She-Ra.
curious. Okay, so this is where I'm gonna jump in here. This is wrong. The Care Bears were this particular art style. I think of the Care Bears was kind of on its way out.
Yeah, that was like early 80s.
That was more early 80s, and the fact that she's playing Pac-Man. So look, this is what got me about the book. There are no female game characters at all as she's playing Pac-Man. In 1986, Ms. Pac-Man had been out for many years.
Right. They're just saying, yeah, they're saying that she wants to see characters that are female. Well, how about Metroid?
Yeah, Metroid was, well, I was like, yeah, I think it came out in Japan in 86, yeah.
So I'm like, there already was a change coming. How about all the women who made the games?
Well, I wanted to talk about that because that, and this was, again, the 80s. We had the creator of Phantasy Star, which is actually my all-time favorite Japanese RPG series. Original, old school, and it had a female character. Mm-hmm. The original game had a female character. It was created by a Japanese woman. And
of course, that was 88, though.
That was in the U.S. It was out, I think it was 87. Now, but, I mean, a change was coming. We had Roberta Williams, who was, at Sierra, and she was breaking all kinds of new ground, doing, amazing games that sold incredibly well. We have Atari commercials.
Yes.
This really pisses me off. Like when we watch these video game retrospectives, and they always talk about like, oh my God, it was such a boys' club. And I'm like, no, when gaming first started, it was a family affair.
It was.
It was for everybody. They're all, like almost all the Atari commercials had boys and girls, moms and dads, everybody playing games together. It really wasn't until I didn't think it was probably after Nintendo. I would say maybe like PS1 era that they really started to go after like teenage boys.
More, yeah.
More. Sega Genesis, maybe.
But when I was a kid, and you were a kid, girls played games all the time. Everybody, like my sister and brother shared a present one year. They wanted one Nintendo when it came out. They shared the gift because they both wanted it. We grew up playing games. I used to play hell out of Rad Racer. We used to play, my mom. Okay, we go to school and my mom would play Zelda all day. She'll tell you this. It's like it wasn't just for boys at all.
My grandmother played on the Atari. She played Pac-Man. Well, I had an Atari 2600. I actually had a 7800. She played Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, and Food Fight. Mm-hmm. She loved Food Fight. And on the NES, she played Tetris, Super Mario, Dr. Mario, mm-hmm. any kind of like puzzle games. She liked those. I like the puzzle
games too.
Yoshi's Cookie.
But this idea that girls weren't out there doing it is not true. They used to see the old big events they did, like the championships. There would be girls there. That was not, it was not unheard of. So this idea that girls weren't, I don't see girls on screen, I don't see girls playing games, isn't really necessarily true.
Yeah, this is what kind of got me, because they're like, oh, it's real to the max. We had, our in-house historians and I'm like, no, guys, you got a lot of things wrong, and it wasn't that long ago. This isn't like you're dealing with a character from the turn of the century. Mm-hmm. We're talking like people. This was not that long ago, and there are probably plenty of people working at Mattel that remember the 80s very well. I'm just putting that out.
Yeah, it's like not hard to make sure these things line up with the dates, but here's it gets me. They're talking about you wanting to see representation and all that. Now, like I said, American Girl, all their girl dolls, their historical dolls especially, and their other dolls have stories that reflect, some kind of, mission or some kind of, like it's a girl, but she's doing things that, that break boundaries and stuff. So, I mean, I'm completely for that. I mean, this whole idea though that girls, were kept down somehow. I understand that for some people that's the reality. For me, and I'm the same age as this doll. that wasn't what I was taught to believe. I remember being a kid and my mom, like her mom's running for office. My mom ran an airport. And I guess, it was unheard of for women to be running airports. And she joked that, the only thing that, well, actually one guy, was like all falling over her, like, oh my God, we have a woman. It's so great. And I never thought that women couldn't do anything or women weren't as good because my mom was out there doing it. And my mom always basically said, you can do whatever you want to do as long as you want to do it. So I remember the one guidance counselor at the school was telling girls they should be secretaries. And my mom like chewed his ass out. It's like this idea that, girls were never as good as boys. It never dawned on me. And like they talk about the Challenger launch. I mean, they had a teacher going up and it was a woman that was picked. It never occurred to me that women couldn't do what men could do ever.
Yeah, I mean, that's that. And again, this is something we talk about a lot, on this channel is it's almost like a lot of, people now feel like they have to reinvent the wheel to go back and, to be like, well, we're the first ones to do.
Right. To make issues that weren't that actually there, it just wasn't. I mean,
we try to show it with, talking about She-Ra, with She-Ra, like, you had everybody praising She-Ra for all the diverse people working on the new show while they're throwing shade at the people who worked on the original show, many of whom were women, were not straight, very diverse audience worked on the original show. Again, it's like it comes from a lack of knowledge of history. The 80s, actually, there were a lot of firsts. They even bring up, Geraldine Ferraro and Sandra Day O'Connor and Christian McAuliffe. And
they didn't mention, but they don't mention these game designers.
No,
she's going to be the first. This doll's going to be the first. And the reason they tried to make her an astronaut was because it was a Luciana last year. That was a doll of the year a couple years ago. So they didn't make her an astronaut. So what can we do that makes her like, oh, we can get the shuttle in there? Oh, how about we make her a gamer?
Yeah, it just really kind of rubbed me the wrong way to put, because you were looking forward to this doll and to get the catalog and be like, there just aren't enough women. She's going to be the first one to make girls in video games.
It's not true.
As she's playing, again, this is...
to me, it belittles the ones who actually did something.
Yeah, and I'm like, as she's playing Pac-Man in 1986, Miss Pac-Man was thing, and kids weren't even playing Pac-Man. By the time we got to 86, the NES was out. People were into Mario. There were tons of other arcade games. Pac-Man was in the rearview mirror.
And Miss Pac-Man was out because girls love Pac-Man so much. They did what do they call it? Those little bundles, those upgrades.
They did a kit.
A kit, so that they could make it, Miss Pac-Man. You remember in the 80s shows, too, that when they always had the mechanics or the people that were the brains, the scientists behind a lot of things, they were women. Like the mechanic for Kit was a woman.
Yeah, Gadget from Rescue Rangers.
Woman.
They often had the brainy girl. So, this isn't, again, the video game thing that got really gets me. Okay, so I see this all the time in movies. It wasn't that long ago. The movie It. Huge for me. I was just like, what the hell? It's supposed to take place, I think it was 1988 or 1989, and they had a Mortal Kombat machine in the arcade, and they're playing Street Fighter the wrong way. I don't know why that irritates me so much, but it does. It's like, just do basic research.
I know. This kind of irritates me that girls, girls can't do things and it's just about time. No. And, the video, oh my God, they did a music video. It's like one of those Elf Yourself videos.
That's wrong.
Yeah, that wasn't until like the 90s. Later. It's just, some of the clothing colors and stuff, it's just...
It's just like...
It's basically one giant advertisement for everything the doll comes with.
Yeah, but this is this whole aesthetic here, the Care Bear and the Pac-Man is 1982.
Yeah, it was earlier.
This was early 80s. By the time you get to mid 80s, it was they got the clothes right. The mid 80s clothes had the wild colors and the.
It was starting to. A lot of the neons and stuff came later. Like rolling your pants and all that. That was later. A lot of the acid wash was like a little bit later.
Yeah, even Stranger Things got that wrong. 85, they're at the mall and all of a sudden they're all dressing like it's 1988.
Yeah.
And that carried over into the early 90s because I remember kids having, we used to call them hammer pants.
Yes.
The baggy ass pants with like the black and white and purple checker pattern and god awful crap.
So, that's why you're seeing a lot of these new designs that are new and they're done like Saved by the Bell style, but that's like 90s.
That was late 80s.
Yeah. It was like early 90s. And it's just, these are things to be nitpicky about, but
I'm just like,
because
we're old. This whole
so tired of
is
it.
late.
And like what did you say? It's like saying that it's the 50s, but they have hippies.
Yeah, exactly. This is what, okay, so people always joke about, like, in the future, they're going to make historical films and they're going to get it all wrong. And I'm like, yeah, it's like lumping it all together. Because for some reason, the 80s and the 90s, and I don't know if it's people who weren't around then, or maybe they're even older and they weren't paying attention to pop culture, but for some reason, it all gels together in the minds of people. Like, there was even a distinction between the early to mid 80s, which were coming off of the 70s, and then the mid to late 80s into the early 90s. Right. And then the mid 90s into the 2000s was a totally different. We were doing like 70s style clothes and stuff like that. It's very different. This is a late 80s, early 90s aesthetic.
And they seem to be wanting to do this year because, one, it was, I think, when they started American Girl. Because usually they pick a year that ends in 4, I believe. Yeah. 2, we have the Challenger explosion. So they wanted to make that a big deal about the Challenger. And they did kind of get that right. There's a movie on there too.
Yeah, if you can watch it. She's trying to design video games. She wants to be a video game designer.
In 1986.
Right, but the graphics, these are like Super NES. Like, we did not have graphics like this in 1986. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
This movie is like all like fun and games, like video. And even then, they're not making out like, I'm going to be the first girl to make games. No, but it takes a really dark turn and it ends with the Challenger explosion.
What does it end? That's like the catalyst in the film is the Challenger explodes and they have the kids saying they're watching the Challenger explosion. Yeah. It's before that. And it's like, yes, for 1986, I kind of see why they want to put that in there. Right. It was a very, very important thing that happened. Oh my God! It was a very important thing that happened, and
it was horrible.
Even if I talk about, I'm not going to talk about it too much because if I start talking about it, I start to cry.
It was horrible.
I have trouble. I start to cry because I remember it. You remember it. I don't think most kids that would have been around then, remember it.
That was for our generation. That was like our JFK moment.
Or 9/11 moment.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, we were older during 9/11. It was one of those things where you remember exactly where you were when it happened. Now, all the schools had the launch because they had a teacher. And I was actually homesick that day.
I was home because we had a snow day.
Yeah, I remember it snowed heavy, but I was homesick. And I remember watching it because I was sitting there. My throat hurt really bad, and I was trying to eat toast, and it hurt, And I'm watching Good Morning America, and I remember exactly where I was. And I remember asking my grandparents, I'm like, what happened? I don't quite get what happened.
Well, no one really understood what happened at first. They thought it was just separation because that usually, you see that type of separation. And then they realized what happened. And we were watching it at home. And I remember going to school, and I know one of our teachers at school was in the running to go. And I remember he asked us, he said, would any of you still go? And I was the only one that raised my hand. Because I was like, this girl was me. I guess it's like when you say as close as you're going to get to a Geeky Sparkles doll ever. Yeah. I played games. I wasn't a game designer, but I played games. I had a mom who was breaking boundaries and doing things that most women didn't do. I loved music videos. I loved to dance. I was all about going into space and really obsessed with like the Challenger and space stuff and all that. This doll is very much me.
Yeah.
And, and then they have to get the Mario Brothers kind of things in here. And it's like, so for me, this doll was like me. And I guess maybe I had a different experience than other girls. But I'm not seeing this whole we're being kept down thing that they're kind of pushing. But like I admit, I was lucky in the fact that I never really thought I couldn't do something because I was a girl, because I was told I could do whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah. And that was one of the big things about the 80s. I mean, I'm not saying that, again, everybody's experiences, were different or whatever, but a lot of the wheels that people are trying to invent these days were actually invented earlier. We're just kind of going back and we kind of fixed the problem. Let's go back and create a new problem or pretend that we didn't fix it and fix it again so we can say we're the ones.
Right. That's the trend we keep seeing. I keep looking at her hair, and perms were big back then, which I also had perms. I'm just saying it from a person who restores American Girl dolls and has worked with a lot of dolls. This doll's hair is going to be a nightmare. It's going to frizz the heck out. You're going to have a mess with this one. I'm just saying.
I had this jacket, but I had this jacket in 1992. That's
what I'm saying. That was the 90s. The acid wash was the 90s. The jeans and the skirts that had like the little here, the waist or bend over with buttons, they were like closer towards 90. I don't know. I think they're trying to think what's the most iconic things we can think of.
Yeah,
from
I think
the 80s,
that's really what it was.
And then we'll just throw it all in there.
Yeah.
So we're kind of being nitpicky here. But
we are being very nitpicky, but it's different. It's different.
Orange Juicy instead of Orange Julius.
Yeah. But
Orange Juicy.
Orange Juicy. Oh, that sounds really bad. But no, it's cool that they're doing it. It's just like, God, it's so like, this is just so cringy. But again, it's for kids. But people, 1,000+ downvotes to 5,000 upvotes. Now you can't comment obviously because it's
for kids, yeah.
A kids thing. But I guess, for kids, it's like, oh yeah, this is a very 80s. And I'm sure they're probably doing it because of Stranger Things, which gets stuff wrong all the time.
It does.
By the way, the first season, I was like, yeah, this is 1983. This is right. They got the house with the wood.
There were still some things we were like, no. But anyway.
Damn it. They screwed up the Transformers.
I know you're so mad about that.
Dustin had an Ultra Magnus in 1985. No, he did not. He did not have Ultra Magnus in 1985. He was released in 1986.
So she might have an Ultra Magnus, depending on when this was in 1986.
I think he
apparently
came out
January.
Spring of 1986, I want to say.
So this is pre-Ultra Magnus as well, because this is January-ish. So, yeah, but to me, I was very excited when I saw this doll, because by the age, it's like she's same age as me. And that made me very excited. But then right up on the online, I was like, this is pretty cool. And then I read the book one, and I'm like, oh no, please say we're not going to do one of those.
Yeah, they're going to do one of those. So that's,
for the love of God.
Again, just to educate whoever wrote the copy for that catalog. There were game designers in the 80s. There were games featuring female characters in the 80s. And video games were actually targeted toward women, girls, everybody in the 1980s. Surprisingly enough, the whole family, mom, dad, and the kids played games. Because why wouldn't they? They're playing Pac-Man in the early 1980s.
And the graphics didn't get the way that they're showing in the games until like closer to the 90s or
that's
into
like
the
Super
90s.
Nintendo.
Yeah,
that's not right either. But I'm really nitpicky about that. I don't know why, but I'm like, especially when they do games that are about like gamer culture, and the games become, I think my thing is, if it's a background thing, that's one thing. If the game is central to the story or whatever, I'm like, just Google.
And if they're doing that, they're going about the historical research they did. At least be right in your research.
I'm like, you're going on. She wouldn't have been rocking early 80s Care Bears jammies in the She-Ra. You own She-Ra.
Yeah, She-Ra. She-Ra was in 86.
You own She-Ra. Or Popples even. I think Popples were a thing back then.
Was it 86 or was that a little bit later?
I think it was mid 80s. That was I don't know. But they
My Little Pony was still pretty big then.
Yeah, but that's their rival. They can't go.
Right.
They probably had a licensing deal with the Care
Well, isn't Care Bears their rival too?
Care Bears is, I know Hasbro had them for a while, but I think they sold them to somebody else.
But I'm just saying that's not their own. They don't own that, but they actually own She-Ra.
Yeah.
But it's not as bright and colorful, even though it defeats the whole idea of girl power. If you're trying to show that girl power is invented by these dolls and characters, then having a line that shows girl power.
Well, okay, so that sort of busts the narrative anyway, because she wanted to create a character that was like a female superhero, whatever. I'm like, yeah, Mattel owned She-Ra. She was big in the 85 and 86. You put She-Ra and be like, yeah, I want to be
know why they picked Care Bears? Because the idea of the game was for the aliens wasn't you defeat them, you all become friends. And that's kind of how Care Bears were.
Care Bears were more vicious. That's kind of
vicious. They fought Satan.
That's how Steven Universe is. The Care Bears, man, they would stare your ass down, and it was like a freaking laser beam. Like, you're either going to hug this shit out or Tenderheart's going to go postal.
That's right. I'm like,
and they do. They're like, Professor Coldheart. They're like, we don't care that you're just a decrepit old man. We're going to shoot your ass with a laser beam. Mm-hmm. Bears with laser stomachs.
Pretty much.
I mean,
and stares.
And stares.
It's like it was like what do moms do to get kids to behave? Stare. Okay, let's make that into a stuffed animal.
With lasers.
That's right.
Stare with lasers. Talking bears staring at you with lasers to get the old man from giving the kids the root beer or whatever that turned them into the monsters without hearts. The 80s were great.
The 80s were edgy.
They were very edgy.
There's a lot of things in the 80s we wouldn't get today, like Secret of Nim, and you get Dark Crystal, but like the original was in the 80s, and Care Bears and My Little Pony, they all fought Satan. Rainbow Bright, pretty much destroyed a girl who was trying to steal a diamond and all that crap. I mean, there was no messing around.
There's no messing around in the 80s. So anyway, we're gonna wrap this up.
Yes.
Okay, so please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. I do recommend checking out the arcade cabinet.
They are very cute. And the first thing you said when we got it was, "Oh my gosh, this will work for your dolls, boo."
I did.
He totally said that.
We got Pac-Man and we got what's the other one? Galaxian. And these are the numbskull cabinets. And I'm like, oh yeah, these are like doll height. And then like 2 or 3 months later, they're like, oh, look, an American Girl doll's coming and she's got her own arcade machine. I'm like, that's our freaking arcade machine. Anyway.
I don't know. Anyway, we'll talk to you later.
Yep, bye.